Patch 12.13 is bringing a ton of balance changes, as well as a surprising amount of quality of life changes. In this video, I'll run through the patch, then cover how this will affect the meta, and also give a prediction tier list so you know what to play tomorrow. Starting off with system changes, a lot of rounds are shorter now, which means you need to think faster when picking augments, and also when at the Treasure Dragon. I like the cut in Treasure Dragon time as I feel that is very long, but I feel like I need the time to think about augments, especially if it's a close call between two or all three. Overall games will be 50 seconds shorter, which saves you about 1 hour every 72 games. You will now take 150 player damage on stage 8. The reason for this is that people with Soraka 3-star would hold people hostage by putting her in with 1 life, healing up, and then taking her out until they're 1 life again. A hilarious but also a much needed change. Double Up gets a new pick order on the carousel. This is a great change as now there's actually a difference between being 4th and 3rd, same with 2nd and 1st. It's hard to memorize, so now you can visually see which order everybody's going in. The reinforcement portal will also cancel immediately if there aren't coming any reinforcements onto the board. Additionally, it will also be easier to see the release timers and the shared draft, which is also nice. Moving on to traits. Assassin gets nerfed hard at 2, a little at 4 and 6 as well. This is almost exclusively a nerf to Assassin Olaf, which has been a really strong comp, especially in Double Up. I'm happy about this change as long as Olaf sees other buffs so you can play him as a carry without Assassin spot on him. Astral gets a buff across the board, which is nice to see. It also gets a small rework. Now it will base the orb quality on what you had in the last turn, so if you're rolling down the next turn, you need to have at least 3 Astral in to even get the bonus from the trait now. Additionally, you can't swap into 6 Astral, roll down, and then swap back to 3 anymore. If this was confusing, they're also getting some visual updates to make it clear on what orb quality you're getting, and as long as that is clear, it should be a great change overall. Astral Emblem is also getting removed. This is a fantastic change. I completely stopped playing Double Up the last week, as 3-star Sorakas with Astral Emblems were in almost every other game, and it frankly ruined the experience. Out of everything in this patch, this is by far my favorite change. Cannoneer gets buffed at all levels except for 2 where it got nerfed slightly. This is a nice change as you rarely run more than 3 Cannoneers in the Corki comp, so hopefully this gives the comp more options in the late game. Mirage Dawnbringer gets nerfed to mostly hit 3-star Nunu carries in that comp, a pretty small nerf overall, which is fine. Ragewing gets nerfed at 3 and buffed at 6 and 9. A good change, as the only Ragewing we have seen last patch was in Guild Zaya, where you never ran more than 3. A great change which should open up some more comps. Revel gets nerfed across the board. Not the biggest fan of this change, although it's mostly to hit Revel Deja, which is kinda OP. Tempest gets buffed at 6 and 8. This is to buff our Shin comps, as those only ran 4 Tempest and never more. Overall a great change as now you have more options when playing him. Trainer gets nerfed at 1-star Namsi, but buffed at 2, 3, and 4-star Namsi. A decent change as 1-star Namsi was a little strong in the early game, and now you will be more incentivized to play 3 trainers in the late game. Warrior gets buffed at 4 and 6. This should help comps like Yone reroll and non-assassin Olaf see more play, which is nice. Shimmer Scale gets buffed and nerfed. Crown of Champions gets a small nerf. You still want to chase this and play 9 Shimmer Scale whenever you can. Determined Investor and Diamond Hands get nerfed, which is fine. Draven's Axe gets a decent nerf. This mostly hurts comp like Corki that run Ida's frontline. Gambler's Blade gets buffed, which is nice to see. Although a lot of the power in this item is random, it still felt like the weakest one. Goldmancer's Staff gets a small buff. Needlessly Big Gem gets more HP, which is nice, as now your unit is more likely to survive until that 15-second mark. Mogul Mail gets a big nerf. This item was really oppressive in the early game if you put it on a 2-star tank, so I'm really happy about this change. Overall, this should make Shimmer Scale more consistent overall in terms of power level, and the trait itself should remain about power neutral. Evoker gets buffed at 4 and 6. You rarely run more than 2, so this should be interesting, especially with the Asol rework that's coming in later, as he's also an Invoker. Guild 7 is now a chase trait you can hit if you get +2 from either hearts or emblems, which is nice to see. Shapeshifter gets nerfed at 2 and buffed at 6. This mostly hits Jade comps, as you get less HP with Nara and Nico now, and it's a nice buff to the late game part in Nidalee reroll once you hit that Shyvana for 6 Shapeshifters. Moving on to 1 costs, Nidalee gets nerfed across the board. Now she gets less attack speed and also deals a little less damage with her spell. Vladimir gets a nice mana buff. He felt a lot better after the last buff, and actually remember that he exists in the game now. This is a nice buff to mages and especially to the frontline of Astral. Moving on to 2 costs, Lilia gets buffed across the board. The AD nerf doesn't really matter as it's all AP damage from her. This definitely makes Lilia in the early game a lot more attractive, as the 1 and 2 star versions might even let you use her as a main carry now. Nami gets buffed overall. Now she will cast more often, which is nice to see. This is especially good if you're running mage variants with only 1 or 2 tanks, as you'll heal up those quite a bit more now. Tristana gets her attack speed nerfed, but as you'll see later, a ton of other carries also got their attack speeds nerfed, so if we keep that in mind, this change is fine to prevent her from becoming too strong. Moving on to 3 costs, Swain gets his HP and attack speed nerfed. This might be a little too much, but with the other changes, it's most likely to prevent Swain from becoming OP next patch. Varus gets his attack speed nerfed as well. This will make him pretty terrible inside of 6 Astral, as he rarely runs Swift Shot in that comp, but the 3 Astral Varus comp definitely needed some nerfs, so this is a nice change to see. Volibear gets a small rework. Now he will always hit 4 champions with his lightning spell. He will deal less damage at 1 and 2 star, but more at 3 star. Overall, this is a nice change to see, and I think Volibear will be stronger next patch as he gets to keep his high attack speed. Moving on to 4 costs, Corki gets his attack speed nerfed, a fine change as it was a strong comp on the last patch. Since a lot of other meta comps also got nerfed and Cannoneer got buffed, I think this change won't kill off the comp, but it definitely hurts. Hecarim will do his second cast more often now. I rarely see this, so it's overall a nice change, but won't have much of an impact. Saya gets the same treatment as Corki. Now she will have less attack speed, but since the comp is so strong, I think this is completely fine. Deja gets nerfed and buffed. She will deal less damage with her auto attacks now, but will deal more damage with her spell. Overall a good change, as you might consider actually putting Sojin on her now for her to cast her spell faster. These are small changes, so she should end up about power neutral, which is nice to see. Shi-OU gets nerfed at 1 and 2 star. Now he will deal less damage with a spell and stun for a shorter time. This is a much needed nerf, as that combo just locked down and killed a champion or 2 every time he casted. A great change to see overall. Siphon will deal less damage with his charge. This is a fine nerf, as he was a bit strong on the last patch. The annoying part about him is his targeting, so hopefully that gets more clear and consistent on future patches. Nico gets a buff at 3 star, which is fine, and Talon gets a slight AD nerf, which is nice to see, as Talon without any damage items dealt a surprisingly large amount of damage. Moving on to 5 costs, Pyke gets more HP, a great change as he will jump to the frontline a lot of the time and take a lot of splash damage. Soraka will heal champions up more with her spell now. It will make her even more splashable, which is nice to see. Zoe gets a large buff. Now she will cast a lot more often. This is a huge buff to mages, as an early Zoe can save your game if you throw a mana item or 2 on her. It should also help out Shimmer Scale a lot as well. Asol gets reworked. There's a lot of text here, but the TLDR is that now he has a lot less reliant on mage, and his spell will be a lot more utility based. The spell will make your entire team deal 20% more damage to the units it hits, and every cast after that does not scale like it would on the previous patch. If he casts after 20 seconds into the fight, his spell will hit the entire enemy board and deal 50% more damage. Overall, a really nice rework, and I'm excited to play around with Asol on the next patch. Shyvana gets buffed. Now she will deal more damage and cast more often. She gets a small buff to her armor and MR, which is nice to see, as she was very tanky in shapeshifter comps. Bard gets a small buff at 1 star. This is fine, as a 1-star Bard is usually really strong, as you get a lot more value from the dudes. Yasuo gets a small AD nerf, which is fine. He is probably the best endgame carry in the game right now, and now he will also reliably execute enemies with his 3rd cast. Moving on to items, Radiant and regular Bramble Vest gets a buff. A nice change, as no other carries besides Assassins actually want Infinity Edge, and because of that, crit reduction is pretty useless. This is a great buff overall. Regular and Radiant Jewel Gauntlet gets a slight rework. Now you get more AP and less crit damage. I like this change, as now this item will be a lot better on champions like Nami and Lulu, as you get almost half a death cap from it. In terms of balance, this should be about power neutral, so if you built JG on a carry before, you should still do it in the next patch. Moving on to Augments, Portable Forge gets nerfed overall. Infinity Force gets the crit chance removed, which makes it weaker on AD carries. Mana Zane gets buffed, and now you get 200 mana instead. A bit scary, as you will repeat cast on a lot of great utility champions like Soraka, Bard, Sona, and Lulu. But overall, a nice change. Obsidian Cleaver gets a little less AD, which is fine. and rocket-propelled fists, also known as Blitzhook, gets an HP nerf. Best Friends gets nerfed across the board. This augment felt like an insta-grab for me whenever my comp could use it, so I'm happy about this change. Blue Battery now works like the item blue buff, and therefore it does not stack with it anymore. A nice change as it makes Karma and Ezreal not OP with that augment anymore. And now they won't have to worry about this combo when balancing these champs in the future. Cluttered Mind gets changed to 4 XP. This is a good change as I haven't seen anyone pick this augment in any of my games. It is a bit hard to fill your entire bench with champs and still make interest, especially in the early game, so overall happy about this change. Cybernetic Implants gets nerfed across the board, a fine change even though the numbers are small. Double Trouble gets nerfed. This is fine as it was very strong with champs like Double Xiaoyu and Double Siphon, so happy about this nerf. More importantly, if you have already 3-starred a champion and you get offered this augment, it will now give you a 2-star copy of the 3-star if you pick it, which is really nice to see. Hallucinate gets a small buff. Now the damage reduction lasts for an extra second, which is nice. And March of Progress also gets buffed. It now gives 5 XP per turn instead of 4. Ricochet gets buffed and now will hit more people. This is a big buff if you're running 4 or 5 cannoneers, but not so much if you're only running 2 or 3. Combat Training now starts with 3 extra AD, and this should have a tiny impact in the early game. Living Forge gives you a different Ornn item every time. This is really nice to see as we won't get any double black cleavers anymore. Makeshift Armor 3 also gets some more stats, which is nice to see. There are some bug fixes. One that is important to note is that Zephyr no longer messes with Legend. If you suffer the Legend or the champ getting sacrificed, they will still get the bonuses. Pause the video if you want to read through the rest of the bug fixes. I will be live streaming tomorrow at around 12 PM Central European Time, so tune in then if you want to watch me put my theory of what will be strong into practice. To first understand what the meta will look like, we need to take a look at the previous meta and patch 12.12b. As we can see, the meta was dominated by 5 comps with different variations: Siphon, Varus, Jades, Xayah, and Corki. All of those 5 comps got nerfed in one way or another. A lot of the less dominant comps didn't get that big of buffs, and some even got nerfed. Overall, it's hard to say where it will all end up, because the last time they nerfed all the meta comps without giving any large buffs to other comps, the meta ended up being the exact same. This might actually happen here as well, although I don't want that to be the case, but this time they will have an impact for sure, right? Generally speaking, I think the meta will remain fairly aggressive, as hitting an early dragon should still be really strong and also gives you clear direction for the game. Because of this aggression, I'm not confident that 10-cost dragons will become dominant, even though they all got buffed. Since a lot of people will keep rolling at level 6 and 7 to not bleed out if they're loss streaking, this will increase the tempo and pressure on the entire lobby, making it harder to get to level 8 and 9 to hit those 10 costs. With that said, let's take a look at my prediction tier list. In the top, I have Mirage Deja. This comp was very strong, and it could win a lot of games last patch if you hit Nunu 3-star. Since the comp barely got changed, I think it's enough for it to climb to S tier since other comps also got nerfed. Jades are in S tier for 2 main reasons. The first one being that Anivia 3-star is still really strong, and going for 3-star Anivia as the main carry and Xiaoyu as the second carry should be a viable strategy. More importantly, if you look at the tier list as a whole, there is a lot of AP in the meta, and Jades can easily tech in Mystics, as you get 1 from Xiaoyu, and you get 2 from Lulu who also gives Invokers. Fitting in 3 or 4 is also easy in that comp. Mages are a comp I've got my eyes on. You could still top 4 and win if you got good augments and a good opener last patch, and with the small buffs to mages and the big buff to Lilia, it's looking promising for them. Siphon will likely remain as one of the best top 4 comps in the game, and in this meta, where it looks like there isn't a whole lot of burst damage, he should still be strong as he's able to heal through a lot of it. Xayah and Talon have been strong since day 1. Regardless of how hard they have been nerfed, this comp finds the way to stay in the meta. This comp is the true cockroach of TFT. But on a more serious note, I think Xayah's ability to one-shot units with her spell helps a lot against the Jade and Mages matchup, which is why it only gets moved down to A tier. Astral Asol is one that is very hard to put anywhere, and that's because I haven't played the reworked version yet, and it's still hard to know if the numbers are high enough for him to be a consistent carry. Corki is one I'm not sure about. He got nerfed, Rebel got nerfed, but Cannoneer got buffed. I think the comp ends up a little worse, and maybe even enough to move it to B tier. Karma reroll stays in B tier. This comp didn't get buffed, and none of the Dragonmancers or Jays got buffed. It might be a tiny bit stronger, but not enough to move it to A tier. Same story with Nidalee reroll. It didn't get nerfed hard enough to get moved down to C tier, and the late game buffs is not enough to move it up to A tier. Varus reroll gets nerfed a little too hard in my opinion. Both Saya and Varus got nerfed, so it's really hard to get much higher than a top 4 now with this comp. Kaba Legends should benefit from this patch, but I'm not sure if it's enough to move it up to A tier, but I will definitely have my eyes on this comp on the next patch. Lastly, Lee Sin should still be a good option if you get him early and crit items early, as he plays really well into mages, Jays, and Corki, but since he didn't get buffed at all, the comp should still remain in B tier. Thank you so much for watching. If you learned something, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Comment down below what video you want me to make next, and if you want to get better at TFT, join the Discord. We got over 9,000 other players there who are hungry to climb. And if you want to get coached by me, the information is over on the Discord server as well. So take care and see you in the next video.